Hello, I hope you're well. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is my most anticipated releases for the summer. So I do this every season. I create a video where I talk about some books that I'm very excited about that are being released in the coming months. In this case, I'm looking at books that are coming out in July, August, and September, although I don't think that any of the books that I'm going to talk about today are actually coming out in September. But anyway, why don't we just dive right in? So we're going to start off by talking about fiction. And the first book that I want to talk about is Everyman by M. Shelley Connor. Not gonna lie, the cover is what caught my eye firstly. And online it looks like there's going to be some sort of gold or metallic foiling. And I am that basic person and am a sucker for some foiling on book covers or dust jackets. So yeah. But then I read what the book was about and it just sounds really interesting. It is this multi-generational story, which I am also a sucker for. So that was like another check in the Brittany box for this book. But it is about this young black woman, Eve, who decides to go find out about her past and learn more about her identity because it sounds like her mother died in childbirth and she's never known her father. But what really struck me about this book is that it is a multi-generational story that begins kind of at the turn of the 20th century with the Great Migration, so when black people in the South were moving to the North, and in this case to Chicago. Now, I've read a lot of books set in the antebellum South. I've read a lot of books set during the Civil War over the years. I've read a lot of books about the Reconstruction era, but I don't know that I've really read about a book or read a book that particularly deals with the Great Migration in any detail. So that was definitely a draw for me. But then Eve, the main character, is living during the Civil Rights Movement and the Black Power movement in Chicago, which again was something that was really interesting and unique to me about the book. So I am very, very intrigued. And then there is a line in the synopsis that says that this book is peopled by rebellious black women, and I was like, sold. So yeah, this book just ticks a lot of boxes for me. I am very, very curious about it, very, very intrigued. The next book is The Showgirl by Nicola Harrison. Now, the moment I saw this cover, it made me think of City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert, which I read last summer and really enjoyed. It was kind of just fun and kind of like the perfect, like, summery, beachy, no-brainer type of read. And that book does deal with show business because the main character is basically living at a theater and working in a theater, and she's dealing with showgirls, but it's like all fictional. Whereas in this book, the main character is a girl coming from the Midwest to New York to live the big dream and become a Ziegfeld Folly. And the Ziegfeld Follies are really interesting. It was like this really over-the-top review where they were famous for being these like drop-dead gorgeous women in these like really lavish costumes, and they always seemed to just be like flowing down these like staircases and things on these like really big set pieces, and it's just like really over the top and really great. But so this girl wants to become a Ziegfeld Folly, and it sounds like she becomes it, but there's like this romance involved. So I think that the romance causes some conflict as far as like her being able to like get to her dream or to like maintain the dream. I don't really know, but the fact that this like Ziegfeld Folly thing is involved, I'm really interested. I also can't think of another book that I've read that touches upon the Ziegfeld Follies, to be quite honest. So it felt unique. You know, with historical fiction, there are certain time periods, certain subjects that are well traversed. This just felt like something really fresh and new. So I was very, very interested in this story and look forward to reading it. The next book is probably my most anticipated release of the summer, not gonna lie. It is The Women of Troy by Pat Barker, And if you are an OG subscriber, then you will likely know that last summer I read The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker and fell in love with it. It was one of my favorite books of 2020, probably my favorite book of 2020, if we're going to be honest. And so when I found out that a follow-up to that book was coming out, I got really excited, and it's almost here. I think it's coming out in August, so I really don't have that much time to wait at this point, but it is continuing in the vein of The Silence of the Girls, which is like a feminist retelling of the Iliad. It seems to be picking up where The Silence of the Girls left off. The character of Briseis seems to feature heavily again, but now that Achilles is gone and she was Achilles' slave, she now belongs to someone else, and she befriends Hecuba, the older wife of Priam, and also this like disgraced soothsayer whose name I can't remember and doesn't really mean much to me, to be quite honest. But if it's anything like The Silence of the Girls, like, this is going to be a contender for one of my favorite books of 2021. So yes to this book. Yes, please. The last of the fiction books that I'm super stoked about is The Second Mrs. Astor by Shayna Abe. Or is it Shayna Abe? I don't know. But when I saw this cover, it seemed so similar to The Woman Before Wallace, which I read a few months ago, that I thought it was either the same author or the same publisher, and it is neither. But this is the story of John Jacob, or Jack Astor, and his second wife, Madeline Force, or Madeline Astor, who were on the Titanic, and they actually feature in a scene in the 1997 movie.
That's John Jacob Astor, the richest man on the ship. His little wifey there, Madeline, is my age and in a delicate condition.
So John Jacob Astor, I think, was like 3 decades older than Madeline, and I think Madeline was like 17 or 18 when they married. But this book is about their love story, which has a tragic end. Madeline makes it off the Titanic. John Jacob Astor does not. But I am really a sucker for anything that has to do with the Titanic, probably because of that movie. Like, it had such like an impression on me, and it was such a part of my adolescence, because it was literally the movie that you watched at every sleepover, probably from the time I was like 7 or 8 until I was like 17 or 18. So left a huge impression on me, but the fact that it is focusing on these two individuals, I'm very, very intrigued. Also, I love a good tragic love story, and that this definitely fits the bill. Now we're on to nonfiction, and the first book that I want to talk about is New Women in the Old West by Winifred Gallagher. Now, I gotta be real with you, I'm not someone who reads a lot about American history, partly because I find it very boring. Like, I've always found it very boring. I'm much more interested in European history, but I am interested in women's history, I am interested in feminism, and I am interested in women's rights movements. And this kind of checks all of those boxes, because it's about the women who moved out west, how they used their migration and the settlement in the West to gain rights for themselves. And it's looking at the women's rights movement, the suffragette movement in the 19th and 20th century through the lens of these pioneering women who moved out west, which I don't really know all that much about them. So I'm very, very curious. I also liked the fact that the book isn't just looking at white women or white pioneers, it's also going to look at Native Americans, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans during this time period as well. So it felt very well-rounded and fresh in that way. So very curious, even though usually American history is not my bag, like, this does seem like it's going to be a really, really interesting look at feminism and getting the right to vote and right to property and all of that stuff. The next book is Lady Parts by Deborah Kopeikin, and I'm going to read you a few lines on this book because there's no way I can do it justice. The title was definitely clickbaity, but then when I read what the book was about, this memoir just seemed like it was going to be so interesting, but also really heartbreaking and kind of dark, and yeah, I'm kind of here for it. So the description is: Lady Parts is Deborah's irreverent inventory of both the female body and the body politic of womanhood in America. The story of one woman brought to her knees by 1-2-12 punch of divorce, solo motherhood, healthcare frogger, unaffordable childcare, shady landlords, her father's death, college tuitions, sexual harassment, corporate indifference, ageism, sexism, and plain old bad luck. Plus 7 serious illnesses, one on top of the other. Like, the bad luck part, there's none of this that doesn't seem like bad luck. It's just all bad luck, but the way they described it with like the body politic and the female body, I was just like, yes, I will read this. I'm reading more memoirs, I discovered recently, than I have in the past, and this just kind of felt like it would be a nice addition to my recent reads. The next book is All the Frequent Troubles of Our Days by Rebecca Donner, and this is a book about a spy in World War II, and I'm just gonna throw it out there. I am a sucker for anything that has to do with spies. Like, if there's a film, a TV show, a book, I'm gonna watch it, I'm gonna read it. Like, that is my jam. I am so curious about the world of espionage. I love the like high stakes and action of it. Like, last night I watched Skyfall for the umpteenth time and it never gets old. Like, never. But with this book, it's about this spy, Mildred Harnack, who I'd never heard of, but she's apparently one of the only Americans to lead a resistance group in Germany, and Hitler gave the direct order for her execution. So we know from the start that she had a very, very sad, very tragic end. But this is a story of everything that she did to create this resistance network within Germany during the war. And I read a book on Virginia Hall, and she was an American in France, so I felt like this was like a nice bookend to that, or nice companion, maybe that's the better way to describe it, to having read that. But what I also loved about this is that it's actually written by one of Mildred Harnack's relatives, so it's written by her great niece, I believe, or it might be three greats, I don't know. But there is a family connection when it comes to the author and the subject, which I thought was really, really unique about it as well. So yes, super excited to read that. And the last book is Maiden Voyages by Sean Evans. And this is a book that I feel like is kind of in the same vein of a few books that I've seen get published this year, where you talk about the women and like a particular mode of transportation. Like, I think there was one on Pan Am, and I feel like there was another book about something else. But Maiden Voyages is about the golden age of the ocean liner, so the early 20th century, and the women aboard them. So it's talking about the celebrities, the millionaires, the migrants, the refugees, the aristocrats, the crew members, basically every type of woman who would be aboard an ocean liner, it talks about them. And there were some familiar names that they mentioned, like Marlene Dietrich, Josephine Baker, even Wallace Simpson, who I read a biography about several months ago. So I was intrigued by their names, but also some names that I didn't recognize. So there's just something about this that seems really compelling to me. But yeah, this like golden age of the ocean liner, like, I know the Titanic, as I've already mentioned, with the Astor romance book that I mentioned in the historical fiction section, and I know of other ocean liners as well, but I don't really know much about the people who use them or that time period. Like, it's fresh to me, it's new, so I'm really looking forward to this one because it does feel innovative and interesting and here's more history about more women that otherwise I wouldn't have known about, so I'm here for that. But yeah, those are the books that I am really excited about that are coming out this summer. As I mentioned, I think most of them are coming out in July and August, but I'll put the pub dates along with the titles, the authors, and all that jazz in the description box for you. But I do hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!